We are hot. We are recording.
We are hot. But the weather's not. It's sticky.
It's muggy.
It's muggy.
It's muggy. But it's wet. I'm so happy about that.
God, all our trails need rain.
But, of course, I had grand plans to do all sorts of scouting in Oklahoma. So, basically, all this weather is coming up from that hurricane that hit, the west coast of Mexico.
Yeah.
The good news is it looks like it missed our Spinistry Palooza stuff. That was what I was kind of on hold for all of that, because if you look at the radar right now, it's a huge amount of water. Hey, we'll see how it works out. Should we go ahead and roll some music?
Let's roll some music. Let's do the damn deal.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to an indoors edition of Shiftless. But we are still in the sunroom of Chateau de Green. We're just doing this on a precautionary basis. It's been a little wet, which has been nice. I'm sure our patio furniture is a little damp today.
Oh, yeah.
I'm assuming no TNSS last night with the wet.
No TNSS. We were going to do TNBG, which is normally our fallback plan. It's Tuesday night at Brad's garage.
Okay.
That just means we meet up. We normally do a 4:30, about a 12-mile loop, and then we come back and scoop up the late showers around 5:30, and then we figure out where we're going to go from there. Typically, we ride some gravel, some back roads, and then head into Denton, go to East Side, hit up the food trucks, and have a beer or three, and then ride back. The rain was relentless yesterday, so we opted to just have a wrench night. We had a couple of guys that needed some wrenching done on their bikes, so we talked about bikes and worked on bikes and drank beer.
I'm about to say, was there beer involved? Possibly.
There was plenty of beer involved, and then we ordered pizza and had it delivered to the garage. So it's always fun. We went through my drivetrain, and then we retaped Hoyt's wheel and put a new valve stem in. And he was having a slow leak and could not figure it out. Of course, once we took his tire off and looked at his rim tape, we were like, here's your problem.
This might explain things right here.
And I was like, when was the last time this tape was changed?
So what is the delivery pizza of choice out this way?
So my kids are Domino's people, but my kids weren't involved last night, so we got Giovanni's. Giovanni's is literally
down there at the corner
where the Subway is.
Yeah.
And it's been there since we moved here. Let's support local.
I hear you.
So
I hear you. And there's definitely nothing special about Domino's.
No, not at all.
Yeah, I actually invested in a pizza steel.
Yeah.
Going to start going down that route. We'll give that a try somewhere down the road.
So you're talking about a steel for your oven?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I don't know if I've ever showed you this, but my oven, I was lucky enough, my cousin cut me a piece of granite that is the exact footprint of the bottom of my oven.
Okay.
And so it lives in my oven.
It just stays there.
Yeah. And so it's basically like a ballast for my oven.
Sure.
Because it takes a little bit longer to heat up, but once you get it heated,
it's a heat sink.
Yeah, and it keeps the oven from fluctuating. So, but the added benefit is I can cook pizzas straight on that in the bottom of my oven. I can turn it on 550, get that thing blazing hot, put a pizza in there, and cook it right on that piece of granite. So,
and that's kind of our plan. The steel, it stays in the oven, and yes, it does take noticeably longer for the oven itself to preheat.
Yeah.
But once it's there, it's just rock solid stable, which that's really nice.
I'm a big proponent of that. But that has nothing to do with bicycles.
It doesn't. Well, but you have to have calories in order to ride a bicycle.
That is true. Speaking of calories, I wanted to, I guess there was a couple of different things I wanted to talk about on like bikepacking trips and stuff.
Okay.
Like food wise, I'm wondering how many of our listeners are making their own bikepacking meals, or what they're doing to their bikepacking meals on multiple day trips. And I only ask this because Garrett and I started talking about it the other day, talking about, a lot of the prepackaged meals you get nowadays, it's almost like weight is a consideration, but space is not a consideration. And I think it's because the majority of them are geared towards backpacking and not bikepacking, whereas space is not such a premium.
Yeah, if you've got an 85-liter backpack, that's 4 feet tall and 3 feet wide, as long as the weight is in line,
right? Yeah,
that's not an issue. That doesn't line up with bikepacking. That's why, quite frankly, when people talk bikepacking setups in general and loading out and kitting up and everything like that, so many people are focused on the grams and the weight. And I actually kind of lean towards volume. Packability is more important than the weight, because if it's packable, the weight's going to be in range anyway. Generally speaking. But if you have something that's ultra light, but in this star-shaped pattern that takes up 20% of your bag, that's more detrimental than something that's 10% heavier that only takes up 10% of your bag.
Yeah. I'm more of a, like you're saying, packability, but just volume, period. Like if it takes up too much space, it's out.
Yeah, very much so.
And that was kind of what the thought process was about food, because a lot of these prepackaged meals, you have to like open them up and bleed all the air out and then crush them back down, so they take up half the space, that they do when you buy them, because otherwise you're going to end up with this gigantic, almost a backpack size bag just for your food. So I just didn't know. I've dabbled with the idea of making my own, dehydrated foods, just so you can get to the campsite, just rehydrate, and that way you could just put them in whatever bag you want. But I have not done that yet. And I was just wondering, at least on a multi-day trip, I mean, an overnighter, it's no big deal, although I firmly believe it's just as tough to pack for one night as it is to pack for 3 nights. But when it comes to food, it's not like you're running out of space packing food for one night, I was just wondering what the general thought process is on that, what people are doing, especially when you're in a place where you're not going to find any refuel. So you're carrying everything, you're filtering your water, and when we did Triple Crown, we planned on 0 refuel, and I think we had to carry like 8 meals, and so there was a lot of, I did a lot of modular stuff too, like snacky stuff for lunch. I did Spam singles, which are surprisingly delicious when you're on a bike.
Okay.
That salt, that fat,
no, I can see that.
Everything.
I can see that.
But it's a good calorie drop just on the side of the trail in the middle, like lunchtime. Especially put a little mustard on it, stave off the cramping. It just made me start thinking when Garrett and I were talking about that, what the current day situation is, because I haven't revisited camping food in quite some time. I found a brand that I love, and I just kind of stuck with it. I think like most people, I started with Mountain House, and there's another one, Backpacker's Pantry.
There's several of them out there.
Those are both just trash.
Essentially the same thing. $12 for what they call 2 meals, which is really one meal,
yeah,
but
especially when you're out in the middle of nowhere,
right? It's the sodium of 4 meals, but it's in that realm of what you're talking about. It takes up a lot. It takes up a lot of space.
Yeah,
and sure, you can pour the hot water in there, but it's still a lot of waste as well, ultimately. And so you still have to pack out almost the same volume, quite frankly.
And I wonder, like, where we're in a society right now where we're trying to, and have been, but eliminate as much waste as we can. And, it seems like almost everybody that runs a multi-day trip has a cooking setup, which would include a pot of some sort that you could rehydrate your meal in.
Yes.
So it seems like someone would pander to that aspect and just do a minimal packaging, maybe just the name and the instructions and have it like on a tiny package, and you could just empty your contents into your pot, That way you don't have this gigantic bag.
Or wouldn't it be cool if it was an edible package?
Yeah.
And then you just dump that in the pot.
The only problem is the shelf life would die. You wouldn't have as good of a shelf life.
If there's enough salt.
That's true. That's true. But it just seems like someone would tackle that aspect of the market. There's got to be a market for it. Minimal packaging.
Is there, though? I mean, we're talking niche upon niche upon niche upon niche again.
That's true.
And then the reality of it is, and I'm going to assume that the backpacking is similar to the bikepacking in this regard, in that obviously there's more people that are into multi-day backpacking trips and bikepacking trips.
Mm-hmm.
But my guess is, of that realm that's showing interest in that, the reality is 80% of the people never really do it, or they just do an overnighter. It's really only about 20 or 25% of the people interested in bikepacking that are actually going out there and doing trips. There's lots of people that it's on their bucket list. It's something they want to do. It's also one of those things that you can find all the excuses in the world. No, I'm not going to do it this weekend. I'm going to do it another. And you just keep kicking that can down the road. My experience is, if you're looking for the perfect bikepacking trip, you're never going to go bikepacking.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's going to suck the first time anyway.
It's all relative.
I mean, it's going to be so much fun, but there's going to be so many things.
It's type 2 fun. It's type 2 fun.
Well, I don't even know if it's type 2 fun, because it's just there's an inevitability of, you forgot something or you brought way too much stuff.
I mean, it's not an adventure until something goes wrong.
That's true.
So your first bikepacking trip is a guaranteed adventure. I'll say that to everyone right now.
Yeah. I mean, it's never going to be what you think. Everybody has this thought process in their head.
So I'm starting to get the emails about Spinistry Palooza now, where it's the casual. Well, what about this? What about that? It's like, you don't really need to worry about that part of it. It's going to happen. Yeah. So, a while back, man, I wish I could remember. There was a guy. It was another YouTube video I saw. It was a fascinating one. He did it from the backpacking perspective, but he was trying to identify the most calorie efficient foods that were the lightest weight and the highest packability, but most bang for the buck, so to speak, calorie wise. And he has this spreadsheet of like 3,000 different foods, and it's all broken down by that. I'll have to look that reference up, and we'll talk about it in a future episode. But
any ones that you can recall?
Actually, a couple of the most efficient ones are the ones I was already using. They're an almond butter cookie thing from, I think, Nature's Valley or something like that.
Those Bavitas?
They're not Bavita brand, but we've used them before on Ministry stuff. Lay's potato chips are high on the list. But then you do get into the volume aspect of the air-filled bag.
Yeah, you just go ahead and dust them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's exactly what you do. So basically, between a box of those cookies and a couple bags of potato chips, you're good for 4 days.
Yeah.
In a worst-case scenario, and it takes up almost no space.
But you got to pack extra toilet paper.
It's a possibility.
That's going to come into play.
Summer sausage has a lot of oomph to it.
Yeah, that makes sense as well.
Obviously, nut butters have a lot of oomph to them.
Yeah.
Nutella.
Yeah.
Honey.
And they have the trail butters and stuff now. You can get in the big pouch, and it just has the twist-off lid. So you can hit it and put a lid back on instead of single serves like the Justins and stuff like that.
Okay.
That's good for a multi-day trip because...
So something along... So like you get one of like a toothpaste tube, a tomato paste tube, just packed with some stuff.
No, it's more
no,
like
I'm just saying
kid's pouch.
No, I get it, but what I'm saying, what you were talking, what is something that somebody could put together?
Yeah.
That's something that would make sense.
Yeah.
basically a toothpaste tube full of peanut butter or almond butter or something like that, and it's just squirt here, squirt there.
Yeah.
That's got some potential to it.
Well, it already exists, though.
It does?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying. I think it's Trail Butter is the name of the company or the name of the product. And they make I want to say it's like a 5 serving as opposed to those little single servings. You know, you peel the top off and hit it. And it's got a locking cap on it. You know, it's got the safety seal. So once you break the seal, it's still a thread. And then you can just thread the cap back on.
Okay.
And it's
There
like
go.
a Capri Sun.
I get you. I'm following you now.
Or I don't know what.
You do that with almond butter and honey, and I'm all over that.
Yeah, that exists. And then there's, I mean, like I said, the Spam singles.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember what the calories. I think it's like 325 calories.
They're ridiculously dense.
Yeah.
And it's actually pretty decent macros if you really break it down.
And the other cool thing is they're like half an inch thick. You know, it's like a 4x4 square, and they're half an inch thick, and so you can slot them in your bags everywhere.
Yeah.
They're not in the way, and I mean, even if you pack 5 of those, you know, it's definitely good in a pinch.
I mentioned summer sausage, but just smoked sausage in general. Little smokies go a long way.
Yeah.
As well. What's the classic? Just always having a bag of gummies around. The real the
Haribos.
The real gummies, not the Colorado gummies.
Oh yeah. Always, mix it up a little bit. Just throw one in there.
Throw one in there, but not for the calories.
Play a little Russian roulette with your gummies. And then that brought me to another question. Like, I noticed, I think Peter Berry, no music while he was on Tour Divide, right? He does not wear headphones. He did not have earbuds in.
No, I don't think he had anything, if I remember what he said.
He's been a voicer of not wearing headphones, if I recall correctly.
No, he was definitely a no headphones, no earbuds guy. I'm assuming he's a no bone conducting headphones guy either.
So I was just wondering on multi-day trips if people are not wearing headphones, or basically I was just wondering what the percentage is of people that listen to music, listen to podcasts, listen to whatever while they're riding versus just nothing.
So do we need to put together a bikepacking poll on this episode and post that for people to respond to? And
it was more just me pondering, but I would be curious. If you listen to headphones, what kind of headphone you're using, and then what you listen to. Like, I remember Alexandra, I read an interview with her about AZT, and she was talking about listening to books,
Mm-hmm.
And Lael Wilcox, I think similarly, listens to podcasts and books while she's riding. And I find myself listening to podcasts while I'm riding. I still haven't gotten into audiobooks tremendously. But I listen to music too, and I feel like I'm more motivated, more amped up when I listen to music. And when I listen to audiobooks, podcasts, I'm just kind of doing the thing. But I listen to, I run the bone conduction headphones, because I also think it's important to hear everything around me as well as my bike, because your bike will tell you before you're having problems sometimes. So I was just curious about that.
All right. So here's what I'll do. Prior to posting this episode, I'm pretty sure our Spotify stuff allows for us to create a poll for an episode.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll play with that functionality, but we'll also encourage folks that want to share detail besides just a poll response to email us. Tell us about what you're up to, how you do things for food, and what listenability and whatever else is out there. And Brad?
Or maybe something that you've done to change up your bike packing setup, packing, campsite, whatever that you wish you would have thought of sooner or wish you would have found sooner, or something that we could call, dare I say, a game changer?
Ooh.
You know?
Ooh, that's putting it out there.
You know.
So what's the best way for people to get this message to us?
I think it's shiftlesslive@gmail.com.
Damn, you're getting good at this.
Yeah.
You're almost a professional now.
I feel pretty good about it. I panicked for a second because I haven't had to recite it in quite some time.
I thought I was going to throw you there. I was willing to leave you hanging.
So what else is going on in the world of cycling?
Kind of like what we spoke about a couple episodes ago. We're going into the off season, so to speak. Lucky. Go lay down. So the bike industry news is getting
slowing down,
a little bit less. But along those lines, shortly after that episode, when you were asking about the Peloton and expressing your interest in that, shortly thereafter, actually, I think the next day, Zwift dropped their special on their new smart trainer, which I thought might be something you might consider looking into. It's kind of interesting. Basically, you buy their smart trainer. It includes a year of Zwift, but what Zwift has thrown into the mix this year that's a little bit of a game changer, actually. This is pretty cool. They have what they call the Zwift Hub now. So the wheel-off smart trainers, one of the downsides to them was you had to take your rear wheel off, and you had to have a matching cassette to what your regular gearing was. Well, Zwift now has a single cog hub, basically a single-speed hub that's electronic gear shifting. So you don't have to change out cassettes on the trainer itself. You just use their single hub and their electronic shifting, and you can set the gearing to match what your gearing is.
They called the Hub 1?
That might be what it's called. But it's pretty cool. It can be used with a single speed, too, if you have a tensioner of some sort. That part was really cool. That's what I used to do on my trainer way back in the day. I've always been a proponent of just having a dedicated bike on the trainer so you don't have to swap it in and out.
Yeah.
And at one point I had a cheapo, we were talking about cheap steel. It was one of those that, I can't even remember the brand, but it was one of those that Hans sold. And then they had a cheap steel single speed. And I just purchased that and put that on the trainer. And I just always use that on the trainer the whole time, single speed. And to actually be able to have electronic gear shifting in it would be really, really cool as well.
I don't understand how this works, though. So where does your chain, so it has a cog?
It has a cog. It has one cog. And
so how does that work with your chain then? I guess I don't quite get it.
I'm not sure. You take your rear wheel off.
And you leave the chain that's on your bike.
Yeah, you just put it over the cog.
Yeah, but how does it tension? Oh, I guess you're still running your derailleur.
You still run your derailleur, so it's like having a 16-tooth cog or whatever. I don't know what size cog it is.
Yeah. Okay.
But so basically, once you start pedaling on it, it calculates because it knows what the cog size is.
Yeah.
So it knows the rotations that you're doing. So once you start pedaling, it figures out what your front chain ring size is.
Yeah.
And so then it's all automatic from there. It automatically calibrates. And so you say, hey, I want to set this up for Shimano 12 speed.
Okay.
And you just do the electronic shifting and it automatically calculates the gearing. And I'm pretty sure you can manually override it if needed as well.
Okay. Now I see the bike actually set up on here. That makes way more sense. I should have looked at more pictures.
That's all right.
Yeah. Very shortly after that podcast came out, I think it was that day, I got a text from one of our other indoor enthusiast riders who also organizes races. And he said, do not by any means buy a Peloton. And I was like, okay. And he goes, you can't do virtual with it. You can't do targeted workouts. You can't, he went on and on. He goes, and this is what he sent to me. And I had briefly looked at it, and I'm not that inclined to get an indoor trainer anyways.
Understood.
But I did not realize what I was actually looking at. This is actually really cool.
It's a neat package, and I say this as a Wahoo fan, a Wahoo Smart Trainer fan, but also now I use the Stages SB20. When Zwift first came out with this smart trainer, I wasn't. I guess I was a Wahoo fanboy at the time, so I was somewhat resistant to it. But with this hub on it and the pack, I mean, it's a really nice trainer for basically half the price of comparable competitors that are out there. All the feedback on it for the past year is just absolutely phenomenal. And like I said, it includes a year of Zwift, so that almost makes it a free trainer at that point.
So I know you don't know the full ins and outs of this particular setup, but I'm going to ask you a bunch of purely ignorant questions because I've never touched Zwift. I've been curious for years, but I have a bunch of other questions. Like, this is just hardware, essentially, right? Like, and then
that trainer is the hardware, but to use Zwift on the computer, you need a smart trainer of some sort.
So, in this connects via Bluetooth or something to my
Bluetooth
computer?
or Ant Plus, or do you have Apple TV?
Yeah,
you're good to go.
Okay.
Zwift runs natively on Apple TV, just like a regular app.
So I would set up my bike on this, and I would pair it with my Apple TV.
You could, or you could pair it with
the laptop.
With the laptop.
Okay, and then so all my metrics are going to be conveyed on there. Does this tell me like power?
Yes.
Okay, and it's going to tell you cadence.
Yes.
And all of that.
Yes.
Okay. Wow, that is good. How hard is it for a dipshit like me to set something like this up? I mean, is it a 2-hour process, or is it like a 30-minute kind of thing?
A dipshit like you would probably be somewhere between 30 minutes and 2 hours.
Okay.
A dipshit like Sean would knock it out in 10 minutes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I've never done the Apple TV setup.
Sure.
My understanding is that's stupid simple.
Yeah.
And that's one of the biggest reasons that Zwift has taken off. They cater very well to the iPhone crowd.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of the things that iPhone and Apple do really well. The most basic stuff is stupid simple. Anybody can fall out of bed and do that on an
very
iPhone.
Very intuitive, yeah.
But once you get past that very basic stuff, sometimes there's stuff, it leaves a little bit to be desired.
Yeah.
So if all you ever need is basic email, basic web browsing, basic pictures, iPhone's fantastic.
Let's don't have an Android versus iPhone conversation again.
The Apple TV aspect is very much the same thing.
Yeah.
My understanding is you pretty much just plug it in and go.
Okay. All right. So I'm continue to be more curious. So let's say I've got my bike set up on there. I've got it connected to my Apple TV. And then you've got to set up like a username or
you have to create a Zwift account.
Yeah. And then do you do any kind of testing, or do you do like a couple of test rides so they can assess your level, or do you get assigned a I don't know what they call it.
Essentially the way it works is, and I mean, I've been using Zwift for years, so it's probably changed somewhat. I can't remember exactly, but I mean, the first time you set it up, it just says, "Hey, let's test it out. Right. Start pedaling. Pedal at this RPM, sort of thing." And if you have your heart rate set up, it links your heart rate monitor and everything like that. Then you can go out and do your first ride. And it just recommended a free ride on one of its basic courses, and you just pedal along. And just based on the way you pedal and how quickly you go up a hill or how many watts you're putting out, it over time calculates, well, based on the way you rode that, we're going to guess your FTP is at this level.
Okay.
And then the more you ride, the more it confirms or adjusts that over time. So you don't have to calibrate your ability on the front end. Over time, it calculates that, And so then if you sign up for races and so forth, it's only going to slot you in the races that you line up for.
I got you.
Based on your skill or ability at that point. But you don't have to race. You can just go out and ride by yourself in these simulated environment and just do a ramble and
virtual, bruh.
And
when are they going to have VR glasses in compatibility with this?
Maybe they already do. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know that there's a huge demand for that aspect of it. Yeah. But I'm not a VR guy, so I can't speak to it. I mean, I'm assuming you can watch it through current VR technology.
Yeah. Okay.
Just like anything you can do on a computer.
I was just curious. You know, my wife's in virtual reality, so it just makes me wonder how come they're not doing something like that.
I did not know your wife was in virtual reality.
Yeah. She works for a therapeutic virtual reality company. They do like for elderly, aging in place, and retirement communities.
You're teaching me brand new stuff right here. I'm going to have to talk to your wife one day.
It's pretty interesting stuff.
It sounds fascinating.
But I'm more Zwift curious than I've ever been. Obviously, I mean, I know nothing. So I think it'd be interesting for me to get one of these and try it out because I need to do something to up my training anyways.
I mean, I've been a huge proponent probably since 2015.
Yeah.
I started out on the Be Cool platform.
Yeah.
Which was really cool. And and their smart trainer and their simulator. So I was kind of anti-Zwift when Zwift was kind of getting going. But the Be Cool community, they're still out there.
Mm-hmm. But they didn't blow up the way Zwift did.
Yeah, they just never got they never got the engagement from the community and no one else has either. That's Wahoo just dropped their simulation platform.
Yeah.
RGT.
I mean, Zwift is pretty much the standard at this point, right?
That's where it gets kind of funky. Zwift is the market. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. They probably have 90% or more of the market.
Zwift is the Facebook of virtual training.
Yeah. Well, as far as simulated training, I guess is the better way to say it. There's so you can use smart trainers in more structured workouts where it's kind of like an exercise bike or a Peloton, but it doesn't have the simulated group environment and stuff like that. There are other platforms that do the training aspect of it, and some argue do that much better than the Zwift stuff. But there was another simulator out there called RGT that Wahoo bought out and incorporated it into their platform, but they just shut that down. There's a new one that came out this year, and it's the one I'm using primarily, Indie Velo.
Mm-hmm.
Indie Velo I like better than Zwift from the technical aspect of how things work, and it's in beta now, so it's being developed and it's growing. From my perspective, Zwift is too video gamey. You get the resistance of going up the hills and so forth, but the actual riding itself, it's like driving a car in a video game versus driving a car for real, or driving a car in Gran Turismo when Gran Turismo first. So Indie Velo is more like a Gran Turismo, where Zwift is more like Cruising USA or something like that. Zwift has gotten a little better, but that's been the biggest bash against Zwift in that they really haven't upped their technology. It's really pretty much the same.
Their game engine.
Yeah, it's kind of behind the times.
But what about, so I know this one is just a rear wheel attachment, and there's nothing for you put a block under your front wheel to raise it up a little bit, or am I assuming that this keeps it level? Because I'm thinking about, like you're talking about climbing hills. Isn't it weird to get the resistance like you're climbing a hill, but your position doesn't change at all? Like there's a trainer that I saw at one point that had where the front end would raise.
The Wahoo has the climb, which will simulate elevation change like that. But it's significantly more dollars to start going down that path. If it's something of value to you, it might be worth going that route. For me, it's nothing I've been interested in. Now, one thing for me that I did invest in for Zwift that kind of funky, The reason I invested in it, I didn't get my money's worth, but how it ended up working in the long run is, and I still don't think I got my money's worth, but it's a worthwhile investment, if that makes sense.
Not really, but I'll let you run with it.
So, talking about Zwift not upping their technology, a few years ago, they introduced somewhat some steering capability into the mix. It used to be the computer just automatically moved you from side to side in steering.
Right.
So they introduced some steering capability a few years ago, but there really wasn't any way to facilitate it where you turned your handlebars to actually turn. You like simulated it using the app on the phone. It was bullshit.
Yeah.
A third-party company put out basically a wheel riser. Works kind of like a Lazy Susan, where the riser would rotate and it would simulate your steering.
Okay.
So it's like, Zwift introduced a mountain bike trail that you could use the steering for.
I remember seeing that.
You were able to steer in the group rides and so forth and pick up your own line and kind of. It didn't really, their steering doesn't work that well, but that was the idea. So after 3 or 4 rides of doing the steering, it's like, this is pointless. This isn't worth my time.
Yeah.
But what I did find was, instead of being on a static block, just pedaling away, just having that natural rotation while you're rotating your legs, and that made a big difference for being on the bike and
simulating a real ride.
Simulating a real ride, but like we've talked about before, a lot of the overuse injuries are from being in those static positions too long. And so that's just another one. If you're locked in where you're never rotating your arms or whatever, your body shifting or whatever, decreases the comfort. Yeah. So just by the bike naturally rotating the front wheel just a little bit on a pedal stroke, it made the Zwift rides that much more comfortable over the long run.
That makes sense. Huh. All right. I think I'm probably going to pull the trigger on one of these and give it a try at least.
I have my old Wahoo kicker snap, which is the wheel on trainer. If you wanted to just try a smart trainer, the reality is it's not going to compare to that setup whatsoever. And you're probably going to be frustrated trying to set it up for the first time, where that more than likely is just going to be plug and play. I think they have a 30-day money-back guarantee.
And then I'd still have to buy a Zwift account, too, with the setup you're talking about.
You get a free trial. You can always get a free trial to try at least a week. I think you get the first month free, sort of thing, and that's not a huge deal, sort of thing. And I've said it before. I am a huge proponent of everybody should have a smart trainer as their N+1 if they're not doing it yet. Not that everyone needs to be on a trainer 6 days a week. That's not what I'm saying. It's if you have that setup that's always there, and that your regular Tuesday night ride does get rained out, go ahead and do 60 minutes on the trainer. Just always have it there to stay in shape is basically what it boils down to. And the smart trainers and things like Zwift and Indie Velo, at least from my perspective, are a lot more engaging than an online spin class instructor would be, for me anyway. But I recognize some people really, really enjoy spin classes. So, Peloton does make sense for people.
Yeah. Like I said, I'm more curious now than I've ever been. I've always rode what we call a dumb trainer.
Yeah.
And it's just a flywheel, essentially. Yep. And it's a fixed gear. So that took some adjustment. But I also, you were talking about being in a locked-in position. I have historically ran speed plate pedals on that bike. I don't know why. But because there's so much slop. And so even when I get out of the saddle, I can kind of flex out my knees and everything else. It feels a lot less pinned in and just locked, like 5 degree of float on your pedals. And it tends to keep me from feeling like that. But I don't know. I'm interested in in trying that out.
I mean, for some people, that's the big benefit of the smart trainers like this. A lot of people, particularly ultra endurance folks, ultra distance folks, they want to train on the same bike that they do take out on those trips.
I'm a huge proponent of that.
So, if you're training for a 500-mile ride,
right,
and you're using this tool to assist in that training, it makes all the sense in the world if you're going to do a 3-hour trainer ride to do it on the saddle and bars and settings and fit of what you're planning to do your multi-day trip on. I do get that. That makes all the sense in the world. So that's definitely a benefit because you're never going to get a Peloton dialed into your same fit that your real bike is.
Good Lord. My dogs will never not be a participant in this podcast. There's never a dull moment with the dogs around.
But I started, I think it was 2006, somewhere around there, 2006, 2007. I got a dislocated shoulder, so I was off the bike for a while. But that was like when I was at my peak, and it's like I can't lose this fitness. So I just got a crappy exercise bike at that time, and there was this guy that I think it was right when YouTube was first starting out. There was this guy named Pedal Masher that was putting out GoPro type videos of timber races and stuff like that, and some trips to Fruta and stuff like that. So it was first person view videos, and I reached out to him and it's like, do you have any of these just the raw footage where I can watch 2 hours of it or something like that?
Yeah.
And he sent me a couple of VHS tapes.
There's a callback.
Yeah. And I would sit on the exercise bike and just pedal along with the first person view footage. And it got me through while I wasn't able to ride the bike. So that at that point is where I learned that makes sense to do the indoor training when it comes up. And after that, I tried everything. I tried the dumb trainers. I tried rollers. They were just such a beatdown. If I was able to pull off 30 minutes on a smart or on a dumb trainer, that was an accomplishment. And I never did it for more than 2 or 3 times in a row. Rollers were a little more engaging.
Yeah. But nobody sits on rollers for 2 hours, do they?
Yeah. I could do rollers for an hour.
Yeah.
That was the thing. I was really trying to build endurance.
Can you get out of the saddle on rollers?
Skilled people can.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm not a skilled person.
Yeah.
But yeah, there are people that can get out of the saddle. And then like I said, when the Be Cool Smart Trainer came, I got a hold of it in 2015. And I was able to instantly ride it for well over 60, 90 minutes at a time. That was a game changer. And like I said, it was just, I was able to, it's still not as fun as riding your bike. I'm not implying that it is.
No, I don't think
but if it keeps you engaged enough to actually do it, that's a big difference.
I think just keeping your legs moving is a good plan, period. A lot of people think, well, I got to take the day off the bike. But there's nothing wrong with just getting on a bike for 30 minutes and pedaling.
What I tell everyone is just always to plan to ride your bike every day.
Mm-hmm.
Just plan to do it. And if you are truly tired and you make yourself ride the bike, just spin really easy for 45 to 60 minutes.
Yeah.
But if you ride your bike every day, 60 minutes, and you do your regular bike rides on your 1, 2, or 3 days a week, you're in that range of 9 to 12 hours a week of riding, which really takes that fitness to that next level where you can literally at any time go out and do anything.
Yeah.
Hey, I wasn't going to do BT Epic, but my buddy wasn't able to make it last minute. I take over their entry. You don't have to worry about it 6 months ahead to train for it. You're always in a position, I can go do Spin and Street Palooza or whatever else. I can go do a multi-day bike packing trip. you're just always at that level where you can pull it off and not be miserable. And that's a huge difference.
Yeah. I'm still looking at the tech specs on this. So it has a 14-tooth single sprocket.
Okay, 14. Okay.
Yeah. The only problem I see is max power is 1,800 watts.
I knew you were going there.
How is it going to accurately, measure my watts
I know.
if it only goes up to 1,800?
I tell you what, when you max out the wattage for over 90 seconds, I'll go ahead and buy that next level trainer for you at that point, okay?
Oh, shit. That's crazy. Yeah, I'm probably going to look into this this might be my Christmas present.
Understood.
So.
Understood.
And I think, and part of the reason that I haven't adopted this a lot or sooner or gotten to where it was more of a serious consideration beforehand is, like we've mentioned before, we're fortunate enough to live in Texas and we can literally ride 12 months a year.
We can ride year round. That's a big difference. So for us, it's more along the lines of, oh, it's too wet to ride today.
Yeah. Or it's really, it doesn't get too cold. It gets too
hot.
Like when we had those 100+ degree days for 40 days in a row, I think the Zwift would have been a better idea than, I'm more inclined to ride when it's cold than I am when it's hot. So, but I think for people that live in a, shitty climate, I think an indoor trainer is way better idea.
There's no doubt that it's been a game changer for
people that live in 6-month climates.
Well, for cycling in general, the combination of gravel getting more popular and smart trainers becoming more common. That's why we have so many people that are able to do 200-mile events. Mm-hmm. It's that simple. Because I remember we were talking about it before. 2008, 2009, mm-hmm. just the concept of doing a 200-mile, it's like, how the hell do you even do that?
Yeah, how do you train up?
Yes.
That's the thing, yeah.
Yeah.
But then you have all kinds of, look at, who is it, Farnsworth, that puts on East Texas Showdown.
Oh, Patrick?
Yeah. What's the distance on that? It's like, there's two of them. There's Central Texas Showdown, and
he's doing a whole series of them. Yeah. I think they all kind of work out for the long ones. I think they're in that 400 to 500 mile.
Yeah, one of them's like 550 range or something, and it's a single go event. It's still a bike packing kind of deal. I think you carry stuff to sleep and do anticipate sleeping, obviously, but
some do, some don't.
That's a big long stretch. Like when let me say the right words here. Unbound. Is it Unbound?
Yes.
When they had announced the XL, it was originally DK XL, and it was 350. I was like, that's going to be monstrous, And then you got people doing it, and I think they this year somebody did it sub 24.
They did it sub 24, didn't they? With a mud section in there.
Yeah. It's crazy, But I think you're right. People's ability to train with power, virtual training, and then just people understanding how to train better, nutrition wise. Finding a coach. I think that's why we're seeing more people doing bigger, longer events like that. It's just become something that you can wrap your head around better.
You can wrap your head, and just like always, there's multiple groups involved. You have a couple of ends of the spectrum. You've got the, for lack of a better term, lifetime racer types,
right?
That are dialed into the newest and greatest of science and coaching and training, and their realm right now that they're operating in is all calorie based. They have it down to the calorie, to the second. And based on their training to power, based on their power output, these are the calories I have to take in these very specific time frames. Mm-hmm. Down to the minute. sort of thing. That's one end. And then you kind of have the middle ground people. Well, Jack Smith, who's leading Lifetime, this is their calorie routine, so I'm doing the same thing. No, that doesn't work for you because that's scientifically analyzed for him.
Yeah.
But there's people that are trying to approximate that. And then you have the real people that are actually 80% of the people that are doing these 500-mile rides, 300-mile rides, and so forth.
And they're fueling out of convenience stores.
They're fueling out of convenience stores or just a very fundamental, I need to work within these macros and these basic caloric guidelines sort of thing. You know, back in the day on one of the rats, Matt Stevens and I had this discussion, you know, where he was doing the stage race. And he's Matt, you know, he's averaging almost 20 miles an hour. So he's knocking out a day in 5 or 6 hours.
Yeah.
But we've got other people that are doing the same day in 10 or 12 hours.
Yeah.
And, you know, Matt's like, I can't comprehend that.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, I'm cooked at 5 or 6 hours. I can't imagine doubling my day.
But he's doubling his effort.
Well, it's not completely linear, but they're...
Well, you're putting out twice the effort in half the time, essentially. You know, I mean,
power to weight ratio comes into play as well.
Yeah. But I mean, just clear cut, just comparison numbers. I mean, obviously, it doesn't transfer over directly, but I mean, if you're going 20 miles an hour, you know, for 5 hours versus 10 miles an hour for 10 hours, you know, you're doing the same amount of work in half the time. So that would explain why he's cooked, you know. I always, you know, think about when you're climbing a hill, and granted we don't have long, ridiculous, extended climbs here like they do in Colorado and Utah and blah, 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 where you're climbing for 7-8 miles, you know, but the kind of climbs we have here, I'm more inclined to get it over with.
Sure.
You know, I see getting to the top quicker as more of a benefit than laying off and just getting in that granny gear and spinning up. Because in my mind, you're putting out just as much effort. You're just extending the time of suck, you know, whereas you can just hammer down, get to the top, and you're done with it, you know. So in my mind, it's a similar thing. You're just compressing the effort.
No, and I'm not disagreeing with you. I get where you're coming from, and that is conventional wisdom, or had been for years. Current science is actually turning that upside down. Current science actually says the opposite. Yeah. It's like you're better off to do the lower output
for an extended
period of time.
But there's got to be a window where that science.
I mean, obviously the lines cross at some point along the way. Dylan Johnson, he's got a fantastic breakdown on that type of riding.
Yeah,
that's how he's approaching the Lifetime series on a lot of his events this year, and he does the science aspect of it. So it's pretty fascinating. But I mean, there's definitely a difference from the mindset approach that you're going into a ride like that or an event like that. There's definitely, if you're doing it from a true competitive standpoint, like those Lifetime riders, I want to be, you know, I want to win that $100,000. That's going to be one approach versus somebody, I just want to survive for 200 miles and don't know, you know, it's going to be a couple of different mindsets. But then in the middle, and this is what's been the most fascinating for me as a promoter, and it's really reinforced this past weekend. In the middle, you kind of have two different mindsets of competitors, even. There's one type of competitor that their focus is, I'm going to be the best I can be. I'm going to do the best I can do, or this is what I've done before. I need to do it better by this measure of myself.
I'm racing myself.
And then there's the other competitor that
I'm going to crush everybody.
I'm going to crush everybody, or I'm going to beat that person, or there's no way I can lose to that person.
Right.
It was eye-opening for me this weekend that it was kind of like an epiphany. It reinforced something that had been in the back of my head forever that had never really clicked before. The people that are racing against themselves are the fun people to be around.
Sure.
the people that want specifically are trying to crush others, they can be less fun to be around. And we had a crowd this weekend that was not made up a lot of the latter. It was almost all the people that were challenging themselves, and that was a blast. It was fun to see people smiling at the end and proud of their accomplishments versus pissed off that somebody
cut a corner
or whatever else. Yeah.
Well, I think and I deal with this with my dinners as well. Like, I think just by the structure of an event, you can preclude some of the not so fun people. Like when you have a multi-terrain event and then you extend it to a certain distance, it automatically gets rid of some of the people that are, I mean, I don't know what you want to call them, but the super serious competitors,
the high maintenance competitors.
Well, I mean, but we need those people because they drive the sport. They raise the bar. Those are the kind of people that go out and do DKXL and sub 24.
They're the people that go out and do Big Sugar, and that's kind of what I was getting at. Yeah. We were on the same weekend as Big Sugar, so a lot of that crowd,
right,
that normally would be at one of our events like this, they were at Big Sugar, which I'm perfectly fine with.
Sure.
And it was, in a way, it was kind of, I mean, don't get me wrong, we had others that are that level of competitor and that skilled of a competitor, that could have kicked ass at Big Sugar and could have kicked ass this weekend that didn't for various reasons.
Yeah.
But they were, they're that high level of a competitor that they got caught up in a wreck for maybe that wasn't of their doing.
Right.
But instead of raising hell and blaming the other people, it's like, hey, bike's okay. I'm going to have a beer.
Yeah, this is the way it goes.
Yeah.
I guess I'm not saying that the right way, but, if you have a 50-mile gravel race, you're going to have guns show up. You're going to have people show up and they are ready to just clip it off, be done, win, get on the podium, get in their car and leave.
Right.
You have a 100-mile mixed surface ride, that same person's not even going to show up at that event,
That used to be the case, but it's not now. That's kind of what I'm getting at. So because of rule of three and, the lifetime events, SBT, the lifetime series, because those are so high profile now, you are getting more of those crush the competition competitors showing up for a mixed surface ride sort of thing, or a grassroots 200 miler. They are showing up for some of those things, and they have their own, they have the non-traditional mindset that doesn't usually line up with those events.
So how did the event go this weekend?
The event went fantastic.
Yeah, everybody loved
it. Dude, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I mean,
it wasn't me. I mean,
it was. You reminded me to get back to my roots. And this was eye-opening for me. It was like, this is exact. Again,
we need more events like that now.
It was essentially the original Red River Riot. It was almost exactly the same format as the original Red River Riot was intended to be.
Intended, yeah.
And the only difference, instead of being at Bar H, it was at 4R.
Yeah.
But Windmill Hill was still in it and things like that.
Yeah.
So that part of it was extremely eye-opening.
Yeah.
The
smiles on smiles on smiles, right?
Smiles of accomplishment, because it was miserable. I mean, we had 80% attrition.
Yeah.
Which we've spoken about that before. Yeah. That's classic spin industry, long, hard, and dirty.
That makes you happy.
It does.
Yeah.
I don't want those. I want my hard event to be hard.
Sure.
But I want it to be doable.
Yeah. You want people to want to come back because they didn't finish it.
Yes. Very, very, very much so.
Yeah.
Our top finisher is a loyal shiftless listener that's actually emailed into us.
Okay.
Justin Carey.
Uh-huh.
He won it on flat pedals. You remember Flat Pedal Justin emailing us?
Yeah.
I would think,
giving us the talking about the Bont Rager shoe.
Yes,
I do remember that. So it didn't offer him any advantage on that course. There's not a hike-a-bike section or anything like that, right?
I mean, he just rides flats. That's what he does.
Yeah, I'm just wondering.
I don't.
I was just thinking it through.
So Justin's a very interesting individual. We might have to schedule an interview.
So tell me about his bike setup. Do you know what he's riding?
That's where I was going next. So this was my favorite part of the top finishers. We only had one gravel bike, full-on gravel bike, in the top 4. By that, I mean a rigid gravel bike. We had other gravel bikes with suspension force, but we'll get there in a second. But what was really cool about that fully rigid gravel bike, 4th place, was Elizabeth Aguilera. She absolutely kicked ass. She probably looked stronger than anybody else out there at the end going on the last loop. But she was on a rigid fork. Now, she has since admitted that that's probably not the way she will do it going forward.
Sure.
Justin won it on a Trek checkpoint with that new Fox suspension fork. So the gravel suspension fork.
Okay.
Our 2nd place guy was on a Santa Cruz.
Trek checkpoint. I don't even think I know that.
That's their gravel bike.
I don't know that bike. I'm looking it up real quick.
I mean, it's only one of the most popular gravel bikes out there right now.
I don't know.
It's Trek. So
I don't keep up with Trek.
It's a good bike.
Yeah.
People like it. But he added the fork to it and the flat pedals. And he's also, and this is part of why it's like, we got to talk to this guy.
Yeah.
He's also got one of those huge retirement community, super puffy saddles on it.
Really?
It's like absolutely. But anyway, 2nd place was a Santa Cruz mountain bike, dual suspension.
Okay.
And 3rd place was a loft gravel bike, but with the loft fork on it. So, front suspension was definitely the way to go. Dual suspension wasn't a bad way to go.
Sure.
We had definitely plenty of folks that...
Well, pause real quick and tell us what the format was. What was the distance? What was the elevation? What was the surface?
So this was our all or nothing mixed surface event. Basically, it was a little over 100 miles, like 103 total, but we'll keep the math simple. Roughly 25 of it was single track, and 75 of it was mostly gravel, but with some pavement in the mix as well. So the first lap was roughly 8 1/3 miles of single track. Then you go out and do 100K of mostly gravel. Come back, do another 8 1/3 miles of single track. Go out and do a 12-mile gravel loop with a sustained climb in it.
Windmill Hill?
Nope.
No?
No, it's actually the Bar H Hill. Going up from Bar H to the Farm to Market Road. But all the way down past Bar H to the bottom down there. And then one more lap of 8+ miles of single track.
So 3 total laps at 4R.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Starting on single track, I'm so glad I did that.
I'm glad that was a huge success. How many people did you have show up?
We had, for the different events, we had 207 people signed up. I think we had 50-something that signed up for the all or nothing, and 27, 28 that actually started.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I think we had a bunch of people that signed up for ours and Big Sugar that opted to do Big Sugar.
Sure.
Was part of it. And it's also one of those that there's a lot of people that sign up for those big ones, and then their training doesn't support showing up for it.
Yeah.
So like I said, we had a really good showing that showed up, and a bunch of people using the single track as the start really threw off a bunch of people's plans, because it's like, it's particularly if they showed up on a gravel bike. I had so many people say I went too hard on that single track.
Yeah.
I didn't know how to pace myself
Yeah.
for that. So we had a bunch of people that pulled the plug after one lap of single track and the 100K of gravel, and they're like, I'm not even going out for a second single track. not going out for that 12 miles of gravel. They're like, I'm just going to drink beer and go down to the Dorba Mountain Bike Festival.
Did 4R support? Did they have food and everything up there?
So it was in conjunction with Dorba's Mountain Bike Festival this weekend. So we did ours on Saturday. Mm-hmm. They had the Sunday mountain bike race on the same loop that we used on Saturday for people that were doing the single track. Mm-hmm. So we stage up at the top of the hill where the wind turbines were for all of our stuff, but the main festival was down at the main 4R entrance. They had an expo area. They had displays. They had all the, kids games and shows and all that stuff all weekend long. And they did serve food down at that main expo area. And any of our riders that were going down to the expo area for our graciously comped them a meal, so we gave them a token and they could go down to the expo area and
very cool
and get a meal.
Very cool. Who was set up expoing? Anybody?
I have no idea. I was up at the top of the hill all weekend. I mean, please look at dorba.org and check out their thanks to their sponsors. They had a huge list of sponsors.
That's awesome.
So
awesome.
Everything I heard, they had a great weekend. I'm pretty sure we pointed some new folks to them from the gravel side. I'm pretty sure they pointed some new folks to us from the mountain bike side.
Yeah, that's a good collab kind of deal.
Hopefully everybody had a great weekend. I know I'm already looking forward to doing this one again. Yeah. And hopefully able to do it in conjunction with Dorba.
And the weather was good, right?
Weather was fantastic.
Yeah.
Weather was fantastic.
What kind of shape was the loop in 4R?
I did not hear any complaints, so I'm assuming it was pretty good. But bringing up the weather, I think you may have heard me say this before. Weather is always a factor.
Yeah, I think it sounds strangely familiar.
Here's what the interesting weather factor was this time. And it took me a while of pondering it to put the pieces together. But we had a bunch of people, a lot more cramping than usual. Mm-hmm. And not just the people that were doing the all or nothing, not just the people that were doing the single track. Because if you were doing the shorter distances, you didn't do any single track. It was just a traditional gravel grinder at that point. So we had people that were cramping more than usual. Our water jugs were drank dry for the first time in forever, and particularly the last year or two. I mean, people have hardly been, even during our summer events, people have hardly been using the water jugs. People during the virus, I think, got used to carrying all their water. Mm-hmm. So, we had plenty of water from what we've been seeing the past couple of years, and it got drained dry. But more cramping than usual. There were some super strong riders that were having a hard time at the end, which you wouldn't have expected, sort of thing. And it wasn't that hot. It wasn't that humid. It was that the wind was actually in their favor for the most part. They had a tailwind for most of the day. When they weren't in a tailwind, they were pretty well sheltered. And I was really kind of put off. I was trying to understand how that could be. Mm-hmm. But then I saw some of the pictures of some of the riders, and they looked like ghosts, mummies. The dust was so thick and so fine there. I think that's what happened. Everybody just literally got caked in because there had been no rain up there. Yeah. It's the dustiest I'd ever seen those roads.
Yeah, and it's that moon dust.
It's the moon dust.
Yeah.
And so I think what was happening, everybody's pores were getting clogged up with the dust.
And they're getting hotter than they would have normally.
And their heat regulation wasn't working like normal.
That makes sense. Perfect sense.
But I'm just an idiot. I make this shit up on the fly.
No, it tracks with me. I mean, but I'm also an idiot too.
So if there's anybody out there that knows how that stuff really works and would like to talk to us about heat transfer and dust and things like that, I would actually be kind of interested in that.
That makes perfect sense to me because I've always contended that when I put sunscreen on, it makes me hotter.
I agree. I refuse to use sunscreen except in the worst of conditions. I will go ahead and sleeve up. I will go ahead and get the wide-brimmed hat or whatever else. Maybe I will do my nose and here and my ears. That's about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, if I slather myself in sunscreen, I overheat.
I do too. Yeah. It makes me way hotter. So I'm glad All or Nothing went very well. I'm excited that like you said, you get back to your roots. And as we discussed with Mark Stevenson, like just the simple fact that we're losing gravel over the course of years, and it's going to continue to happen. I don't see new gravel going in. I just see old gravel going away. We need more events where we can tie a bunch of different surfaces together. And I think it kind of bridges the gap between a lot of different styles of riding, and like Rudolph's Revenge is a really good example as well. I love the fact that there's single track, there's gravel, there's very little road in that. I think we need more events like that. Yeah, you still need, gravel only events, but I love the fact that we have people like you and like the guys that put on Rule of Three doing these multi-surface events. I think it's a great premise for an event. So
I think that's the next evolution of gravel, but it really isn't the next evolution of gravel. Belgian Waffle Ride, for example.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of understood to be one of the premier gravel, air quotes, gravel events out there.
Mm-hmm.
One of the pushbacks on it for years has been, and my numbers may be wrong, but I think it's only like 30 to 40% gravel, and the rest of it's paved.
Yeah.
But there's some single track in the mix too, and things like that. But some of the traditional gravel people out there used to turn their nose up at Belgian Waffle Ride because they called themselves a gravel grinder and there was so little gravel.
Yeah.
The recent UCI Worlds gravel events, first year specifically, very low percentage of gravel on it. This year's, my understanding, is a good bit more, but still a lot of pavement in the mix there. And then there's a lot of these other national level events that are, they have a pretty good mix of pavement in them. And a lot of traditional gravel folks were put off by that. But I don't see that there's a true downside to it. It's still, it's not the gravel surface that makes the route. It's the scenery on either side of you. It's still the lack of cars and things like that. That's the majority of it. If there's some dirt under your wheels, hey, that's fantastic. But hey, I'm guilty of it. There's been plenty of times where I've done a 20-mile gravel stretch and I hit that pavement. It's like, I'll take that.
Yeah.
That feels good.
Yeah, this is a nice reprieve. Yeah. Yeah.
So, I'm not against that at all. Well, you mentioned Patrick and the Central Texas Showdown earlier. Mm-hmm. I don't know the route inside and out, but I know a good chunk of it.
Mm-hmm.
And he used a lot of Llano County.
Mm-hmm.
And that used to be all of our hill country hunty stuff that we don't use anymore because it's all paved over.
Yeah.
It's still fantastic riding, though. Yeah. Out there around Enchanted Rock and all that. Mm-hmm. Amazing riding, even if it is paved over now. Go out and do that Willow City loop. Hey, that's one of the best rides to be had in the whole state, and it's all paved.
Yeah.
So there's no downside to incorporating pavement in the mix along those lines.
No, and I think what I'm trying to say is I just think I love, I'm a big fan of the ramble style ride, where you try to hit everything you can. But I think, it's going to become increasingly difficult to find, to put together 100-mile gravel ride that isn't in the middle of nowhere.
Right. Oh, it's impossible around here now. And
so I think not only is a multi-surface like ramble, if you will, more engaging, it forces people to contemplate their weapon of choice, if you will, as well. But it is more conducive to hosting in a closer to town. It doesn't have to be as big of a destination for people to show up and do it.
Yeah.
And so I think it's a win-win in my situation or in my head. Now, granted, you're going to kind of omit the super racer boys from showing up, unless
maybe.
they're more adventurous, know. So
I mean, our first Monster Cross Monday that we did years and years, I think you were there.
Probably.
I mean, that had Carlson and Powers and
Mm-hmm.
Foley and all those guys in it. And I mean, that's as mixed terrain as you get, and that's as grassroots as you get. And, stuff like that's a blast, but it's still always going to be somewhat specialized,
Yeah.
Oh, there I go with throwing that term around.
Say that.
I can't say that.
You'll have to edit that out.
Yeah.
So, let's move on. Because we never talked about Race Across Texas.
Okay.
What happened with Race Across Texas?
What I would like to do is maybe bring in our buddy Rich Waldschmidt.
Oh.
And
I don't know if I really want to talk to him.
I know.
He's such a bore. Maybe I should just read some of his books about shit he doesn't know about. No, I'd love to talk to him.